lot of attention on the White House today, including statements that it is exploring all options after U.S. President Donald Trump announced that he's going to put 100% tariffs on films made abroad.
Other nations, a lot of them, have stolen our movie industry. And I'm saying if they're not willing to make a movie inside the United States, then we should have a tariff on movies that come in. And not only
Trump's
that,
comments are raising concern from Canada's film industry, obviously known as Hollywood North, for the number of films that are produced in cities from Vancouver to Halifax every year. There's some in production right now. For more on what these tariffs could mean for Canadian cinema, we're joined by Alistair Hepburn, Executive Director of ACTRA Toronto. Welcome to Your Morning.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
Trump has said movies being made outside the U.S. present a national security threat. Your union represents more than 15,000 performers in the industry. How are the members reacting, first of all, to the U.S. president's comments?
Well, I mean, I think anyone who lobs a hand grenade like this is definitely going to rattle folks, performers, crews, anybody to do with the industry. But there's a whole lot of questions that surround it. It is a giant if at the moment, and we are trying to take a measured approach as we wait to see what rolls out here.
Well, that's it. It's just all the uncertainty. It's a big statement with not a lot of details behind it of who and where and how much. About half of the films and TV shot in Canada are international productions. According to MPA Canada, more than 239,000 people work in our film and TV industry. So how could these tariffs affect Canadian movie making?
Well, I mean, I think if we just look back at the SAG-AFTRA strike in 2003, where productions essentially shut down overnight, in the city of Toronto, which is where I'm based, we saw a decrease immediately of 50% of the workload overnight. That has an economic impact. $1.5 to $2 billion is sort of a rough estimate of what we would be looking at potentially. So there is a real economic concern with all of this. But again, it's that if factor that we're struggling with at the moment.
Somebody yesterday made a comparison to movie making and automaking in that there's a lot of sort of cross-border intermingling when you make these productions, not to mention the fact that these would also hurt America in the fact that, if countries like Canada offer tax breaks, it's going to be more expensive for them to make movies south of the border.
Yeah, and I think really you can look at what happened with the stock market yesterday. The moment these words came out of President Trump's mouth, Netflix, Paramount, Disney, all of their stocks took a major hit. It would just be cost prohibitive for them to be able to do the work that they do. This is a global industry. They travel the world, not just for locations, for talent, for crew, for infrastructure, for tax credits, right? That's why it is such a transitory industry.
A big appeal, of course, of America is the size of their market. So if the U.S. imposes a 100% tariff on all foreign films, how does that limit the reach for Canadian filmmakers?
Well, I mean, I think what we then have to look at is what can we do to bolster the domestic market? What can we do to actually start supporting our own performers, our own writers, our own directors, our own visions? And I think, maybe this is a real moment where we can kind of turn the gaze inward back at ourselves and allow us to really start to support in a meaningful way the Canadian entertainment industry.
Well, let's talk more about that because the film industry has faced several challenges this decade. They had COVID shutdowns, the U.S. actors and writers strike in 2023. If these tariffs go through, what will Canada's film industry need to do to try and adapt?
I mean, I think, I can talk about Ontario. The province of Ontario will need to look at some sort of increased tax credit for domestic producers, some sort of IP fund increase to allow the work to be done. There's lots of great European models that actually work, that really support and grow homegrown talent. And that's what we're going to be looking for federally, provincially. That's what the governments are going to need to do to really support the industry and ensure that the industry continues to tell the Canadian stories.
What have we heard from the American side of the industry, if anything?
I think cautious rhetoric is what we have heard at this point. Of course, bringing work back to their native soil is something that they would be definitely interested in. But then you can hear from Governor Newsom in California, who very clearly stated that this is a bad idea. There are ways, there are means to grow the industry, to bring some of that work back to LA, but this is not it, and he's been very clear about that.
Alistair Hepburn, Executive Director of Actor Toronto, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. My pleasure.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.